Welcome back to the World with Randall Williams, and today we jump into the world of our 47th president, Donald J. Trump. He was obviously the 45th president as well. He won fair and square in November, and his first day in office was yesterday on Martin Luther King Day, of all days. He is already invoking a lot of change. We're seeing corporations bend the knee, change policies to things that he wants, to phrases that he wants to protect free speech. Um, and I think we can get into that at a later date. I would like to jump into some of his executive orders. Number one, obviously, he is pardoning January 6th insurrectionists, over 1,500 of them pardoned. They tried to storm the Capitol years ago, injuring police officers and threatening the lives of many congressmen and congresswomen and so many more. Um, and he's basically just letting them all go free, even the ones who attack police officers. And Donald Trump has said that, or President Trump has said that he is a friend of the blue, but you know, these people who supported him, who wanted him to remain in office, who attacked police officers, he is going to pardon them. Um, it's crazy to think that you could storm the Capitol, and because of who you support, um, you could get away with it. Like I think that's wild. It's just wild to me that anytime I've been around DC and you're around these monuments, you're around these places, DC is an interesting place when you're flying into it, when you're just spending a lot of time around it because it doesn't have skyscrapers. You just have all these national monuments like the Capitol, like the White House. Um, and so it's wild to think that, if you had supported Trump, that he would let you go free. I mean, most of the time that these would be like, it feels like they'd be felonies, and these people will just walk free. I think that's crazy, but it is what it is. It goes to show that he does have somewhat of a loud army and a silent army, an army who will undoubtedly raise arms if they don't like something, and he's been quick to point out over time that there are good people on both sides, despite a very specific group of people that is obviously trying to um, either harm another or push a narrative or something to that extent. So that's one of the ones that is wild. The second one that I'd like to discuss is him changing the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. And my big thing with this is just like, why? Why? Like, what does that do? He's talked so much about bringing America back to be a global power, but the Gulf of America to me doesn't insert a lot of, like, it doesn't, saying that changing the name doesn't necessarily change the power dynamics. Um, that's just me. I don't see it that way. The United States has a lot of jurisdiction over a lot of that water as well, and so when you change that name, so what? I had some people ask me, like, does he have jurisdiction? And I looked it up. Yes, he can via an executive order. The U.S. Board of Geographic Names has the jurisdiction, but presidents can do that with what he just did. So that's my thing. It's just like, why? What is this doing? I don't know. I don't know. I think that he's so pro America that if he sees something that he thinks could benefit the country, something as small as a name, even though it has no significance to, I think, the everyday American, he'll change it. He'll change it, and he doesn't care. Another thing he did was withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement as well as withdraw from the World Health Organization. Um, there were multiple countries who reacted over this in a wide variety of stories. But there's one statement in Politico that I read that really caused me to pause. And it said, when the U.S. steps away from the Paris agreements a week after entire towns in California are erased, it says something. Said Francis Collin, the senior director for international climate policy at the Liberal Center for American Progress. I couldn't have said it better myself. Um, I think that's insane. You have the Palisades fire and these fires in Los Angeles that are going on, burning down people's homes. And you have an entire administration that is denying climate change or its impacts or its effects. It's just wild, and I think that um, Mr. Cologne said it very well, and I think that you know we'll be in position as we do. We go into these hurricane seasons, we go into these tornado seasons, we go into these wildfire seasons, and it's not to say that the Paris Climate Agreement elevates us that much more, but in terms of things that just affect everyday life, these climate changes that do have an impact on us, like I don't know that the Paris Climate Agreements can help us uh, handle hurricanes better or handle these wildfires better, but just having conversations with other countries, I think, is beneficial. We're all people; we all deal with different things, and I understand that the United States is a very rich country, and that there are a lot of countries who don't have the same um, financial power that we do. But I don't think that means that we can't help them the way that President Trump has said. In reference to the World Health Organization, Trump said that, WHO, everybody rips off the United States and that's it. It's not going to happen anymore. I've read that across a wide variety of articles in ABC News and CNN and elsewhere. Um, but it's just one of those things where we're fresh off a global pandemic that was just 5 years ago. We saw how that shut the world down, and the way that it separated us, it took the lives of so many, and the way that we were disconnected during that time. I mean, it was the misinformation was running rampant back then. We You had people discrediting one another, and where the virus came from and what to do and what procedures to follow, and should we quarantine and shouldn't we quarantine. It never felt like the country was on the same page, whether you wanted to be vaccinated or not, even when the vaccine came into play. But simply, the fact that we're not on the same page about saving lives is concerning. And uh it's wild to me that the US contributes 18% of WHO $6.8 billion budget, and that's a massive, massive cut. And I guess Trump sees that, and he's like, oh, it's way too much money for whatever reason. I'd have to hear him listen, or I have to listen to him talk about it a little more. But it does concern me because you know these sicknesses pop up, and the last thing you want is someone close to you to pass away because they don't have the proper instructions. They don't have the language to prevent such things. And I feel like, a lot of things during the COVID-19 pandemic were preventable from our government during that time. And because Trump was so anti-COVID and wanting to keep the doors open and stores open and all of these things and reopen the country at a time when, we probably should have been quarantining, things went the way that they went. Um, there's a quote I read in ABC News. I think about the WHO as a network of countries around the world that inform and protect each other when health issues are emerging, whether there are health issues entering into the United States or whether the health issue is going outside the United States. So Dr. Perry Halkitis, dean of the Rutgers School of Public Health in New Jersey, told ABC News. And so it is disadvantageous for people, and is disadvantageous for the United States, who need access to relevant and timely important information. It's like if a disease pops up here and we want to inform other countries, or if a disease pops up elsewhere and we want to inform those countries, uh, it doesn't feel like that relationship is there anymore. And if it is, the information will be relayed late because we're not in the World Health Organization anymore, which is crazy because like the World Health Organization, it's over the entire world. And yet America is withdrawn from it because we don't like the deal of contributing to something when we are obviously so much richer than other countries. The next one, he has committed to cutting back on diversity, equity, and inclusion, aka DEI, and gender rights protections. He's cutting budgets, cutting mandates, cutting programs. I have no doubt that scholarships will be cut as well. This is something he's talked about for a very long time. He said, we will forge a society that is merit based and he'll end DEI inside the federal government. And this is something that hits close to home for me because I do come from a diverse background, obviously, and I think that the pathways that were forged by the people who came before me feel like they are just being you know retract, and it's not, retract isn't even the right word, destroyed. It feels like they're being destroyed, and just out of the sake, it doesn't really feel like there's any reason except for uh he just doesn't like it. He doesn't like that, or he doesn't like people that agree with him. He doesn't like people who acknowledge that America's history starts in racism with slavery, and the brutal history of America rising to be what it is today. Um, in reference to the genders, he made the comment there are only two genders, male and female. And again, my question is why? Like, what does this? How does this impact the people who are um, invoking this change? How does this impact them? From school systems to the everyday workforce. I work in a place where they do have an all gender. We do have an all gender restroom. It's never bothered me once. It's not my business. I think everybody deserves fair rights, and it's just one of those things where it's just like, why? What has the community of the LGBTQIA done to American citizens? What have they done to threaten democracy or Trump or his followers, so much so that it's worth taking away their rights? I don't know. I don't know. I have, I've discussed this with plenty of people who identify with the LGBTQIA, and I don't get it. I don't get it. And it's a really sad day, and it's going to be a sad term for those people. So I'd encourage you to, if you have those people in your life, support them in ways that they communicate to you. Trump has obviously gone out to talk about how he's anti-woke. That's a word that I think conservatives have hijacked so much so that they use it more than I think people did to begin with, of the word woke itself. Um, I don't even know if they know how to define it. But one of the things that they talked about is striking down critical race theory, which is essentially trying to erase the history of America or rewrite it in a way that does not tell the truth about the racism within the country. There's plenty of books out there you can read. I think this did all start from Nicole Hannah Jones in the New York Times's 1619 Project, and the work that she's done, and spreading an incredible book and the true history of America, and the studies and the research that they've done over there. And so instead of talking about how this country came to be and how we can be better, Trump and his supporters and his allies and his cabinet would rather just erase it all together and say, oh, this is, we've always been fair. Slavery wasn't that bad. And that's concerning. That's concerning. I think it's now is a time more important than ever to educate yourself and to read books, because in the education system, I'm not sure that they'll be teaching history the same way that they once were, the same way that things were things were changing. And in some states, obviously, they were striking this down even before he got in office. But now that he's in office, I mean, these AP African American history classes, I don't know that they'll exist anymore. So I think it's a sad day, and all you can do is encourage other people to continue to read and apply themselves, and make it so that um, they're the best candidate possible. But at the same time, it's one of those things where he says we will forge a society that is merit based. Well, some of these laws that were put in place to help hire people from diverse backgrounds were put in place because they weren't being hired in the first place. Um, Being overqualified is something that African Americans and people who come from diverse backgrounds often have to deal with. And, sometimes you don't get a call back, sometimes you don't get a job over for whatever reason. But, when you say merit based, it just brings me back to a time where they just weren't hiring people of color at all. So I'm not too excited about that. I'm going to have a lot of conversations with students as to how they can prepare themselves for the workforce and um, help them adjust to this change. Number five, the fifth executive order I want to discuss is the TikTok law. That TikTok was banned for 12 hours and then it came back, but CapCut was still unavailable. And I think there's an app called Lemon 8 that I'm unfamiliar with. That has now been extended 75 days. Um, that is so that TikTok can find a new or TikTok can find an American buyer, period. Um, there was some really strange messaging going on with TikTok because when the app was down, it posted this message where they said, we want to thank Trump for free speech or something. Maybe that was after the app went back up, but they said they wanted to thank Trump for free speech, but or for excuse me, for protecting free speech. But I thought this was about national security. And what does free speech, what does, a Chinese based app have to do with free speech? Unless, of course, it's one of those things where they censor it, where you can't criticize, um, or they don't want you criticizing uh, Trump's administration and the decisions that he makes. But TikTok has 75 days to find a new buyer. There have been plenty of people that have been raising their hands. They obviously do not want to sell its US based business. Trump has encouraged them to. Many parties have encouraged them to. I don't know where it goes, but I know that it has a huge impact on jobs and creators who are on TikTok. And the crazy thing to me about it is that, for creators who lean left, it creates this weird situation where you need TikTok back in order to make a living. However, at the same time, you're asking for someone who might not align with you morally. And it's just a really, really weird situation. I do expect TikTok to eventually find a buyer. Trump has basically found a soft spot in his heart for TikTok and he's mentioned this multiple times where he said TikTok helped him win the election and all of the podcasts that he was on that aided him during his campaign. So we'll have to see. I think 75 days great, uh, but I'd also encourage everyone to look at other platforms too because I think who knows what TikTok will turn into if slash when it finds an American buyer. Number six, executive order. Federal workers are going to be mandated to return to office. There are 2.3 million of them. I believe that's in Washington. I'd have to triple check that and I'll put it in the um, subtitles below, but in office 5 days a week. According to NPR and the US Office of Personnel Management, in August 2024, 54% of their employees work in office, while a mere 10% work remote. Um, this is something that I think Trump and older people in general want to see people in office. I think it really depends on your work habits, your work situation, the type of work you do. I think it's on a case by case basis. I don't necessarily have a strong feeling about that, but I know that there will be people who are drastically impacted by this. I think work from home and hybrid work allows adults and parents to do a lot of things that they couldn't before and handle a lot of responsibilities that may have been tough. So I think it's one of those things where, again, I've said this throughout the video, but why? Why? What is happening that is so bad that you need to end something that isn't necessarily affecting the bottom line? Don't know. Executive order number 7, Trump has said he will end birthright citizenship, and that is when someone is born here and they are automatically deemed a citizen. He's planning on ending that. And there are 22 states I saw that are planning to sue. This is one of those things that I think is going to play out over a long period of time. Um, because Trump has one of his things is immigration and border patrol, and he's already getting ICE to deport so many different people across cities and whatnot. So it's an unfortunate thing that he attacks these people the way that they do, and despite all of the incredible work that they do across America. But it is what it is, and I think that it's something that we have to live with. And last but certainly not least, he has ordered the attorney general to help states get lethal injection for drugs. If you remember correctly, Trump carried out 13 federal executions in his last term. That's more than any other U.S. president, more executions than any other U.S. president in over 100 years. It just looks like he's picking up where he left off. I'm not sure exactly when, if slash when these executions will begin, but he's making sure that these states have the drugs to carry them out. So I do think that there are some very vile acts that people commit, um, and I think they're on a case by case basis as to who deserves what penalty. President or former President Biden, he pardoned a lot of people. Yesterday, I guess that would have been his last, not yesterday, but on Sunday, which would have been his last day in office, and gave them life in prison instead of the death penalty. I think that Trump is going to come close to exceeding that the number that he had the last time. And I mean, I don't know that that's a legacy that I would want as president, to be the guy who carried out the most executions, but hey, I mean, to each their own. And that's something that I guess he's proud of, and something that I guess he wants to um, carry out. So those are the 8 executive orders that I wanted to discuss today. I'm sure that Trump will have many more. My next video will be on the impact that Trump will have within sports. I think that Trump went to bat with many different sports leagues, sports characters, sports athletes, sports executives, owners, and I think that could very well happen again. We're in the midst of this transitioning phase where I think people are still kind of coping and coming to terms with this, but over time, he's undoubtedly going to butt heads with someone, and uh, I think it's going to happen at some point in sports. I don't know. Well, I'll get into that a little later, but those are the 8 executive orders I wanted to discuss. And that's all I got for you all today. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Like, comment, and subscribe. I'm always in the comments responding to people and having discussions, as long as they're in a healthy manner. Please don't jump in my comments on some weirdo timing, because it don't need to be that. But anyways, talk to you all soon. Have a good rest of the week. And this is The World with Randall Williams. See you all next time.